All right, so let's see today's chapter. So we're gonna continue to see the 60s and 70s art in the United States today. So second, let me just use the highlighter. So in the last meeting, we saw the New York School abstract expressionists and the pop art in 60s and 70s. Today, we're gonna see the rest of the art movement in 60s and 70s in the United States, like photorealism, minimalism, installation art, conceptual art, video art, and feminism. And we're going to see the postmodernism in the next meeting. So let's see photorealism first. So the pop arts, we learned the pop arts in the last meeting, right? And pop arts focus on imagery in the mass media, inspired artists to look more closely at photographs. In trend called photorealism, and they began to paint what they saw in the photographs. This is Chuck Close, who is an American painter, artist, and photographer. He makes massive scale photorealist portraits, and Close often paints abstract portraits of himself and others, which hang in collections internationally. And Close also creates photo portraits using a very large format camera. So we saw this, self-portrait before, right? When we do the transformational self-portrait sketchbook project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a super realistic portrait painting on a large canvas. And it's his representative style of art. So Close had been known for his skillful brushwork as a graduate student at Yale University. Close began a series of paintings derived from black and white photographs of a female nude, which he copied onto canvas and painted in color. And he explained in a 2009 interview, he made a choice in 1967 to make art hard for himself and force a personal artistic breakthrough by abandoning the paint brush. And throughout his career, Chuck Close has expanded his contribution to portraiture. Through the mastery of such varied drawing and painting techniques as ink, graphite, pastel, watercolor, contact crayon, finger painting, and stamp pad ink on paper, and also printmaking techniques such as mezzotint, etching, woodcuts, lino cuts, and silk screens, as well as a handmade paper collage, Polaroid photographs, or daguerreotype and jacquard tapestries. So I'm gonna share a video to see his more diverse works with his interview. So this is his studio.
Chuck, where's the starting point for a painting for you?
When I finished the last one. My life is like, I always said it's like painting the Brooklyn Bridge. When you get to the end, you have to go back to the other end and start over. It's like the length of time that it takes me to make a painting, 3-4 months. It used to take as much as 12 or 14 months. I'm going to be there for a while, and And then when it's done, the next day, start a new one.
So with a new one, do you decide who you want to paint, or do you make a lot of photographs of different people, friends and so on, and then decide from the photograph?
Yeah, I have lots of time while I'm working to think about what I want to do next. And during that 4-month period or whatever, I'll be photographing people. And then some of those images float to the top. Not necessarily what I would predict either. There's some people I really want to paint, and I don't have a photograph that demands to be painted. And another photograph, another Polaroid that I was much less interested in photographing that person, perhaps, it just demands to be painted. And I'm plagued with indecision. I can't decide what to order in a restaurant.
What about the individual marks though that you make? Because anyone now looking at the marks you've started to make on the canvas there and the photograph of the face, for them there won't be any immediate connection. But obviously in a finished painting, it will absolutely evoke Philip's face. But how does that process work for you? Can you make any mark you want and then just you have to...
I don't know how it happens, to tell you the truth. When I did the things that are more like those multiples over there where there's 1 dot per square, then it was, which of course is all pre-digital. I mean, I did these things before computers, before pixels. You know, they're pixels from here rather than anywhere else.
Pixels on the screen blown up, yeah.
Yeah, but what I do is do something very similar to what the computer does, which is average together everything in that area. But the computer, at least so far, is sort of coldly mechanical because it doesn't know what it's looking at. You can build a certain amount of variation and variety into your program, but it's not going to do it because it knows what it's looking at. It's going to do it because every third or fourth shape is going to be done a different way. But in my case, what I'm doing is I get tired of what I'm doing. Computers don't get tired. They don't get bored. But if you paint, you get tired of doing things a certain way, and you get bored doing it a certain way. And you don't want to just do all the squares the same way. So I entertain myself by trying to do something in a kind of ass-backwards way. Like, I remember when I was doing the portrait of Bill Clinton, he was smiling and his teeth were like 5 chiclets in a row. And I realized that what happened was one square, those squares became symbols. Each square was a tooth, count the number of squares, that's how many teeth. Well, no other squares in the painting are done that way. You know, an eye is made of many different odd shapes. So what I had to do was go back and find some other way, you know, to move those white shapes of the teeth together. So I made something, anybody who's old enough to remember Lil Abner, they're sort of shmoo shape, the least likely kind of shape that would end up making teeth. Well, that's like a hoot, to take a shape that couldn't possibly, under any stretch of the imagination, become teeth and make them be teeth. There might be a place where there's a long straight line, you know, like you're building a house out of bricks and it just stopped there. And it's hard to get that to look like, you know, someone's face that's round or whatever. But it's more fun to do it in a way, more interesting to do it in a way that is unlikely. You know, I could give the same photograph that I'm working from to 5 other artists who also work from photographs. And they would make something that, when reproduced, would look the same as mine. But the experience of being in front of them would have been very different.
If you made the same painting from the same photograph 4 or 5 years down the line.
Do it a different way.
Yeah.
Which is why I recycle images so much. Right now I'm recycling images that I did in the 70s, pumping them through a new medium, a new scale, different kind of physicality. But I'm painting Phil Glass now, who is my most recycled person. I think I've done 100 and some pieces based on the same 1968 photograph.
I always thought that you would have an almost photographic memory for the faces that you've scrutinized over the decades, but I discovered recently in a television program that you have a face blindness.
Right.
So when you're looking at Philip and then transferring onto the canvas, do you see everything almost microcosmically? I mean, are you looking from grid to grid when you look at a photograph, or can you hold the face for a few seconds when you turn to the canvas?
Well, first of all, the reason I work I was driven to work to make portraits because I have face blindness. And I want to commit images to memory of people that I know and love. And in real life, three-dimensionally, if you move your head half an inch, to me it's a whole new head I haven't seen before. And that's why I don't recognize on the street the person that I spent 4 hours having dinner with the night before, staring intently in their face. And I know everything about them. I know where they went to school, when they got married, how old their kids are, where they go to school, but I'll see them on the street next day. I have no idea that I've ever seen them before. And this is really hard to, people think I'm rude, you know. I've heard things like, God, what a stuck-up snob, what a asshole. I spent so many evenings with him, he never says hello. Well, I don't say hello because I haven't the slightest fucking idea who they are. But if I flatten their image out and scan it, I have photographic memory.
So that is a totally memorized image for you?
Oh, yeah.
Aha, okay, now I understand.
Photographic memory of flat things, no memory of things in dimension. So if I'm going to be an artist, what do I pick to do? Well, you know, I used to work abstractly, and then, and I still love abstraction. I still love minimalism. It makes my heart race. But I wasn't very good at it, you know. So I wanted something that had personal urgency. What kind of personal urgency do you have any more than dealing with your deficits? You know, that's who I am. I am that person with these major deficits. I spent years trying to hide it, but that's who I am, you know, that's who I am. So I'm driven to paint portraits, and then I was, I think, driven to work from photographs. So I just have to translate from one flat surface to another. So in this photograph, one square in the photograph becomes 4 squares in the painting. And I look at that square and I think, what am I going to do? I can connect these and make it into a kind of shoe shape. You know, I can make it a donut with a dark center. I can make whatever. And this is pretty much just shorthand, what I put on so far. None of those shapes will be the way they are right now. Just giving me something, you know, to respond to when I get to the next thing. That basic structure of the rough draft.
When will the canvas, is it after the second stage, or can you already see hints as to how this will crystallize into an image?
I have ideas that something is liable to happen, but there's no guarantee. And in fact, if there were a guarantee that I had everything in the first pass, it wouldn't be very interesting to do the second and third or fourth passes. I always said about my paintings, because I used to spend like 2 months putting gesso on and wet sanding it and getting the surface just right. And you know, on the highway, you pass an apartment complex, and it said, if you lived here, you'd be home by now. So after I get this perfect white surface, I thought, well, gee, if I were Ryman, I'd be home now. And then I spent a long time putting this grid on, and if I were Agnes Martin, I'd be home now. And I still haven't started making a painting yet, so, I'm feeling the surface, and I'm feeling the incremental unit, and I'm getting used to that rhythmic beat, the incremental unit. I'm getting used to, and I find it, I don't measure, I use no mathematics whatsoever. It's all bumping into things and finding and feeling it, and it's all the journey.
That was Chuck Close. Now let's see the minimalism. Minimalism is an art movement that began in post-World War II Western art and most strongly with American visual arts in the 1960s and early 1970s. The movement is often interpreted as a reaction against abstract expressionism and modernism. It anticipated contemporary post-minimal art practices, which extend or reflect on minimalism's original objectives. So this is Donald Judd. Donald Judd was an American artist associated with minimalism. In his work, Judd sought autonomy and clarity for the constructed object and the space created by it. So this is his work. He abandoned painting for sculpture in the early 1960s. In his essay, Judd found a starting point for a new territory for American art, and a simultaneous rejection of radical inherited European artistic values, these values being illusion and interpreted space as opposite to real space. And the next art movement is installation. But before we move on to the next art movement, we're gonna see what the minimalism art closer.
So you see a few cubes sitting in an art gallery and you think, this is the greatest hoax that anyone has ever pulled off. You immediately walk away, discouraged by the wide gulf between what you hope for when you walk into a museum and what they've presented to you. How did we get here? How could these cubes that the artist didn't even make with their own hands be important? This is the case for minimalism. First off, we're not talking about minimalism as a general sensibility or the life-changing magic of tidying up. We're talking about the art of a particular moment in time, namely the 1960s, when all of a sudden there was a lot of geometric abstract art. Some of it was painting by artists like Frank Stella and Ellsworth Kelly, but most of it was sculpture by artists like Donald Judd, Carl Andre, Dan Flavin, Anne Truitt, Robert Morris, Tony Smith, Ronald Bladen, and Sol LeWitt. Art critics called it ABC art, object art, primary structures, and cool art, but the term minimalism prevailed. These artists never called their art minimalist, by the way, nor did they like the term, or the implication that the work was so reductive that it was minimally art. But minimalism was a rejection of what came before, specifically abstract expressionism, which dominated the art market in the 1950s. These new artists wanted to remove expression completely, remove emotion, empty the work of idiosyncratic gesture, make it resistant to biographical reading. Their hard-edged, basic shapes and forms avoided illusion, metaphor, and overt symbolism. The forms were often repeated, one thing after another, in regular, non-hierarchical arrangements, rejecting compositional balancing, no artist hemming and hawing over the canvas here. The objects were impersonal, many of them machine-made, fabricated from new and industrial materials. Sometimes this entailed ready-made units, like Andre's bricks or Flavin's fluorescent tubes. They didn't want you to ooh and ah or admire the handling of paint. As LeWitt once said, it is best that the basic unit be deliberately uninteresting. Robert Morris wrote that he could hear a resounding no at the time. No to transcendence and and spiritual values, heroic scale, anguished decisions, historicizing narrative, valuable artifact, intelligent structure, interesting visual experience. But what they were saying yes to was a new and startling realness, abandoning the pedestal to dismantle the separation between you and the art. Judd claimed these works are neither painting nor sculpture, but instead specific objects occupying real space. These objects aren't pointing to anything or referencing anything. Andre called his work a kind of plastic poetry, in which elements are combined to produce space. So there is no illusion of space, it just is space. Minimalism had its haters from the start. In 1967, art critic Michael Fried attacked the work for being theatrical. For him, it was an object in a room that had presence before a viewer, but it did not have what good art has, which is presentness, or an instant of aesthetic experience which occurs in no real space or time at all. But Fried really just ended up affirming exactly what the artists were trying to do, proving how radical it really was. Despite its detractors, minimalism became all the rage. This geometric, unadorned style flowed throughout the worlds of fashion, theater, and design. In short, it was cool. And then because these artists were never trying to be minimalist to begin with, they moved on to other things, and other kinds of art had its day. But minimalism changed things. For centuries, art had been trying to trick you, convince you that the hunk of rock was something other than a hunk of rock. But not this. You feel like there's gotta be some secret to it, but there isn't. There's nothing to interpret. This is what it is. It wasn't supposed to look like art of the past, and it wasn't supposed to function like it either. With minimalism, meaning doesn't rest inside the object, waiting to be unlocked. The meaning is in the context and exists in your interaction with it. But minimalism is a resistant lover. It's just not that into you. It encourages observation but doesn't draw you in. And it was never trying to. Remember, these objects were supposed to be emptied of pretension, of mastery, of the usual seduction between art and viewer, and of the grand, glorious traditions that preceded them. But the fetishization and commodification of minimalist art has complicated and polluted these ideas. What's less real than million-dollar plywood boxes? And yet, for me at least, minimalist art can still impart a strong feeling. A feeling for space, light, for presence and absence. You're aware of your own body in the gallery as you've never been before. You notice that your position in the room shapes your perception of the thing. You appreciate the architecture and the spareness. And in a world filled with complexity and information and lots of stuff, this is a balm. This is a world more simplified than the actual world is. And that I can appreciate.
So that was minimalism. This is installation. We just watched the video, and the many of the the minimalist artists they use the space like the installation. So the installation art is an artistic genre of three-dimensional works that often are site-specific and designed to transform the perception of the space, like this. So minimalist sculptures were shown carefully positioned in architectural spaces of a museum or gallery. An artist created the installation in spaces conceived of as works of art or viewers to enter the experience. Now let's move on to another art movement, conceptual art. Conceptual art is art in which ideas are paramount, and the form that realizes those ideas as secondary, often lightweight or unremarkable. Conceptual art is art in which the concept or idea involved in the work take precedence over traditional aesthetic, technical, and material concerns. Conceptualism is not a style, but a way of thinking about art, and artists have put it to many different uses, and many conceptual artists work with language for words when written, take on a double life as image and idea. This is Yoko Ono's Grapefruit. which is a conceptual artist book. An artist book is a work of art that is based on the idea of a book and what a book does. And we accept that books are made of paper, are bound, and contain information. And the artist book plays on these truth. That is conceptual art. And the next art trend in 60s and 70s is video art. The portable video cameras were first made available to the general public in 1965, and the first two works of video art quickly followed within weeks of each other. One was by Andy Warhol, who had been asked by a magazine to experiment with one of the new devices. And the other one was by Nam June Paik, who recorded from a taxi his view of the papal motorcade during the Pope's historic visit to New York in 1965. So this is Nam June Paik, who was a Korean-American artist. He worked with a variety of media, and he is considered to be the founder of video art. Nam June Paik, internationally recognized as the father of video art, created a large body of work, including video sculptures, installations, performances, and videotapes and television productions. And he had a global presence and influence, and his innovative art and visionary ideas continue to inspire a new generation of artists. So I'm gonna share a video to see his video art.
Nam June Paik, I knew of his art long before I saw the piece in Trenton. People say he was the father of video art. He actually did found a whole new art form.
He functioned on a level that was sort of like a Picasso or an Andy Warhol in terms of international stature.
Nam June Paik's PBS 1963-2000 is a spectacular video sculpture at the former NJN Public Television Building in Trenton. It was installed in 1993. The New Jersey State Council on the Arts has just spearheaded its complete restoration. Tom Moran coordinated the installation with Nam June Paik in the early 1990s, when he worked for the New Jersey State Council on the Arts.
I basically picked up the phone and called him and told him about the project. I also said that just a few miles up the road was where the Sarnoff lab was located, and that was where the television cathode ray tube was developed. He was totally on board after about the third sentence.
Lauren Otis, Executive Director of Artworks in Trenton, coordinated the restoration. Artworks is also hosting an exhibition about the video wall.
The piece is three elements. It's the neon elements, and it is the video monitors, and it is the actual content of the video monitors.
One of the modules is surrounded by languages from around the world, and this is the Paik's concern, or his celebration more so, about communication.
There are old Korean symbols, Sumerian pictograms, ancient Brahmi characters, and others.
There's certainly a lot of reference to language, which is something that he was fascinated by, language. And he was speaking several languages: Japanese, Chinese, Korean, English. I believe he spoke German and French as well. He was fascinated with knowledge in general.
The second module of 26 monitors focuses on the development of the cathode ray tube, and there's a, kind of a cute little cliche image of a house. So the idea of the cathode ray tube linked to the house, it's obviously a symbol of how important TV became.
In the content, which is very rapid fire cuts and motion, he almost does a retrospective of a lot of his collaborations. So in the video that you'll see in Trenton are John Cage, David Bowie, Yoko Ono, Charlotte Moorman, all of these artists in the world of Fluxus, one of the movements that Nam June Paik was a part of.
By the late 1990s, the old TVs and neon in the PBS video wall started to fail. The sculpture went completely dark in 2011 when the state closed NJN and decided to have Channel 13 in New York manage New Jersey's PBS affiliate. George Zenowitz of Z-Signs in Trenton repaired Paik's neon symbols.
It's a lot of fun. I'm excited to be part of it. It's a rare opportunity to get to work on a huge piece of neon art by a major artist. It's a light bulb. There's like 100 neon pieces in there, and there was about 9 of them that were burned out. What happens there, it's like old-fashioned Christmas tree lighting. When one burns out, everything else on that circuit also burns out.
C.T. Louie and Rafaela Shirley from CTL Electronics in New York worked closely with Nam June Paik and now help restore his installations all around the world. They recommended replacing Paik's old TV monitors with LED flat screens. It's not something that's been done with most other Paik restorations, but in this case, there was a compelling reason.
The masking has to move, right?
Yeah, the masking looks like it's off-centered a little bit.
The artwork, which is to be on 24/7 and under direct sunlight, it was a very judicious choice to evolve towards these flat screens.
We've been working on the restoration of this piece, redoing the neon, redoing the wiring, and today the final piece, which is getting in the new acrylic, and so now you'll actually kind of be able to see the neon as it was intended. The old acrylic got crazed and kind of obscured the neon a bit. This is the ultimate gig, for sure. And peeling stuff. There's always peeling involved.
NJN Public Television interviewed Nam June Paik in 1993, when PBS was first installed.
In my case, things are not only things, but what things can mean, Not just by chance you pick up, like Duchamp or Cage did it. But in my case, I construct something, with that history.
He used something that was sitting in every middle-class living room, a television set, and he turned it into something else that people looked at and began to think about what was the meaning of this to their lives. He was very interested in the democratization of art and of ideas, and felt that television was one of the great ways to do that.
All right. So who was it? Nam June Paik, who is father of video art. Please remember his name. Now let's move on to the feminism. Feminist organizations had originally been formed around such issues as equal rights and equal pay. Because images are so powerful and pervasive in contemporary society, and visual culture quickly became a feminist concern, both in art and the media. Women art professionals organized to recover women's art of the past, to push for more equitable representation in museums and galleries, and to nurture contemporary women artists. And this is Judy Chicago, who is an American feminist artist, art educator, and writer known for her large collaborative art installation pieces about birth and creation images which examine the role of women in history and culture. By the 1970s, Chicago had founded the first feminist art program in the United States. So this is Judy Chicago's dinner party, which is perhaps the most important work from this time. A collaborative work, The Dinner Party, was executed with the help of 100 of women and several men. Arranged around the triangular table are 39 place settings on the tabletop. Each one created in honor of influential women, such as Egyptian ruler Hatshepsut and the novelist Virginia Woolf. And the names of additional 999 important women are written on this tile floor on the center. So I'm going to share a video to see this, the dinner party's work closer.
With a dinner party, Martha Teichner offers a closer look at the work of artist Judy Chicago.
You can see this work when you visit the Brooklyn Museum.
I wanted to substitute female heroes for male heroes.
The dinner party, a triangular table set for 39 singular women.
You have Virginia Woolf next to Georgia O'Keeffe, right,
with the names of nearly 1,000 others on the floor around it. In porcelain and needlework, it has a spiritual, Last Supper quality, intentionally. Women volunteers did the sewing.
You know, all those anonymous stitchers in the ecclesiastical embroidery class making vestments in praise of male power, male deity. What if we took our own techniques and put them in service to our own achievements?
Considered shocking and provocative when it was first shown in 1979, it was eviscerated by the critics, most of them male. One called it Vaginas on Plates.
It tells this story of centuries of struggle, achievement, erasure, struggle, achievement, erasure.
Today, it is considered an icon of feminist art. Since 2007, with pride of place in its own gallery at the Brooklyn Museum.
I used to go around saying, I wonder if I'll live long enough to see the body, huge body of my art emerge from the shadow of the dinner party.
A career retrospective at the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco is her first ever. She's 82. This woman acknowledged as the founding mother of feminist art.
And when I walked in, I got very emotional, actually, because it was not just seeing the work, it was seeing my entire life.
In the beginning, all she wanted was to be taken seriously as a woman artist.
I mean, I would watch these male artists, you know, being moved along on a little choo-choo train to success, and I would have a big show and nothing would happen.
Born Judith Cohen, she was married at 21 and a widow at 23, her husband killed in a car crash. Just out of graduate school, she threw herself into the Southern California art scene and tried to be one of the boys.
I tried to look tough. I tried smoking cigars for a while, but that didn't work. I was like...
By 1970, she'd had it. She declared her independence and affirmed her gender. and took a name of her own choosing, Judy Chicago, after her hometown.
I was not going to hide who I was. I was just not.
She became an artistic chameleon, matching technique to subject matter. She even went to auto body school to learn spray painting. The result? Car hoods like no others. She tackled tough subjects: the extinction of animals, birth, toxic masculinity, the Holocaust.
A lot of artists don't do 10, 15 techniques in a lifetime. They do one or
I'd be
two.
bored. I would shoot myself. Donna, we're gonna do purple, blue, green, right?
She and her husband, Donald Woodman, live and work in an old hotel Woodman renovated in Belen, New Mexico, an out-of-the-way railroad town south of Albuquerque. They've been married since 1985.
Green will blow into the blue and purple, and it's the brightest.
Woodman is a respected photographer, but also a collaborator on his wife's projects.
Yeah, white.
Here, Judy Chicago exists
Well, right here, look at this.
in a kind of exile from the hostility of the art establishment.
Anger can fuel creativity, and in my case, it did. I had a burning desire to make art. That was what was the most important thing to me in my life. I gave up everything for it. I don't care. That was my goal.
But a funny thing happened. Times changed. A Me Too world finally got Judy Chicago. Suddenly, she was a star. She designed the set for the 2020 Dior Couture show in Paris, and a line of Dior handbags. Last summer, Judy Chicago published an autobiography, The Flowering, just in time for the opening of the DeYoung show.
I think one of the things that actually makes life meaningful is the fact that it's going to end.
The exhibition begins with the end, her most recent series. So viewers have no choice but to take in the breadth of what Judy Chicago has done, other than the dinner party.
And then they'll come into this room and they'll go, oh, thank God!
Pastel color and light.
Right, right. An abstraction.
She's always loved color. Her favorite is purple. You'd never guess. On a perfect mid-October evening, outside the DeYoung Museum, she set off an explosion of color.
Perfect, look at that!
The non-toxic smokes billowed and blended as thousands of fans watched art blowing away. Cheered on by the world at her feet, the art world be damned. For Judy Chicago, validation after all this time looks like this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Being helpful is part of the family. So get your clean.
All right, so that was Judy Chicago for the feminism. So we're gonna continue to see the rest art movement after the postmodernism art movement in the next meeting. And today we have a discussion related to what just we learned. So this is today's topic. So we just saw, the artist Nam June Paik, who is the father of video art, right? And here is the link. We just watched it together. And this is the topic. So please research contemporary video artists and choose your favorite video artist. Please attach a link of their video work example and tell us why you choose that artist as your favorite. So that's today's topic. And let me just share the schedule again. Everyone, I posted your grade, no, most of them. So please check your grade, and then if you miss anything, please do any missing activities as soon as possible. And by next Monday, that is the last late submission day. So after that point, I'm not going to accept any late submissions. So please check your grade. And if you miss anything, then please do it as soon as possible and let me know. You must let me know by email so I can track them and upgrade your grade. And the final sketchbook submission due date is also next Monday. I'm going to give you the detailed direction in the next meeting with the format. So please don't miss next meeting. And on next Monday, we're going to review all the chapters for the final exam. Yes, Melissa, you have to color it. So the finishing means, you have to color up your artwork, okay? But if you are, if you created a piece of work as a black and white, you can just, finish it as black and white. No, so you just have to finish it, all right? And next Wednesday is the last day of the course. So you're going to take the final exam. And if you miss the final exam, then you cannot pass this course. So please keep in mind this schedule. Any question, everyone, about the schedule or any late submissions? No?
Nope, that's it.
All right. So have a great day, everyone, and see you on Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Have a good English.
Bye.
Professor.
Yes?
Did you receive my my final sketchbook?
Your final sketchbook. Give me 1 second. Did you post it in the Moodle room or did you send it to me by email?
Moodle.
Moodle. Okay. 1 second. Let me just check it. Yeah, well received. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any other question? If you don't, Samantha? Samantha?